You're listening to the Jōrni Podcast. Some experiences leave wounds we can't see but deeply feel. In this episode, we explore how release and renewal can begin in unexpected ways. This episode contains adult subject matter, and some listeners may be triggered by this content. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Jōrni Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we explore how working with energy can create openings for both physical and emotional renewal. Our conversation highlights how beliefs, emotions, and even daily interactions carry energetic signals that shape the way we feel and respond. Shannon Leischner is a renowned spiritual catalyst, psychic medium, and energy healer who has helped thousands break through energetic blocks and align with their highest path. Born with all 5 clairs and known for her grounded, transformational approach, she combines deep metaphysical insight with practical healing tools. A survivor of profound personal healing, Shannon teaches from lived experience, not theory. Her work empowers people to remember who they are and claim the lives they were born to live. As a presenter, she brings clarity, connection, and real activation to any room, making her a powerful voice in soul-led transformation. Here is my interview with Shannon Leischner. Hi, Shannon. It's great to have you on the podcast today. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because we will be diving into energy healing today. And wow, what an exciting topic. And as I said, I don't think that we've done a full episode on just energy healing yet on the podcast. We've woven it into different kind of topics, but I am excited that you're here today. And thanks for joining me. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I mean, what an honor to be part of your podcast. I mean, I hear so many amazing things about you, so I'm just so honored to be on your podcast. And since this is the first energy healing podcast, how fun. Like, I love being a pioneer.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much. I feel the podcast is the space for all of us to come together and talk exactly about these kind of things because very often we don't get to hear that information. We're not told this information by healthcare providers, neighbors, friends, or from anybody who needs to hear that. So I'm glad you're here today and you're going to share your wisdom on all of this. And for starters, do you want to maybe share a little bit about your own story? And I'm kind of thinking maybe the parts of your journey or your story that connect to what you do today, and let our listeners know a little bit about what it is that you do today so they can get to know you.
So I am a person who truly feels like I'm here to help people. And I started out as a very young child knowing that I was supposed to help people. Very connected to spirit, very connected to energy. I was born into a family of kind of psychics. And I could say kind of because each one has their own gifts. But I was born into a household that actually was very energetically active. They would do seances, table risings, past life regressions. My mother would dream things and they would come true. My aunt would see spirits and all of those types of things. And my grandfather was probably one of the most powerful people to locate things. He was hired by an oil company to actually locate oil, and he would douse for oil. And my great grandmother was actually one of a world renowned psychic as well. And they didn't have internet back then, but people would come all over the world to see her. And so I was born in that energy. And I truly feel that when you're of the light, sometimes, you've got to, not you've got to, and maybe that's a belief system, but you face adversity so that you know how to help people who are also facing adversity. And I've gone through many of my 9 lives and lots of things happen. But the most recent experience, and I will say the most recent and last installment of experiences when it comes to this kind of stuff, was the Las Vegas massacre. I was saved in the Las Vegas massacre, let's call it that. It was probably the most traumatic thing that's ever happened to me in my life, watching people drop. And I was saved by an angel who kept a bullet from killing me. And it's a big, long story, but if anyone wants to hear it, I can definitely send you to another part. But in the interest of time, I had seen the event before it happened. I was able to pull the bullet out and heal it before it happened. And then at the event, past, present, and future came together, and Gabriel helped slow down the bullet. So when it went in, it was able to come right back out again. And it was a surreal experience, and definitely something that opened up all of my senses even more than they already were, because I was already working this in a healing capacity. But that really opened up something amazing. I don't know if anybody's ever watched the movie Glass, but it talks about when people are going through traumatic experiences, more of your abilities can open up. And in that moment, I remembered how to affect the body by thought, and how to go into the brain and move out trauma, and how to go into the brain and heal the amygdala so that it no longer triggers the same energy, and how to go into the body and clear out those responses so that there isn't a trigger or an energy that holds you back. And that was all resulting from the event in Vegas.
Wow, that's incredible. And thank you for sharing that. And, for some of the listeners that may not be familiar with energy work or energy healing or energy medicine or really anything around that topic, can you maybe tell us a little bit about what that actually means when we talk about that? I feel like a lot of people, when we talk about physical injury or when we talk about trauma, we think of sort of a traditional healthcare setting. We go to therapy or we have talk therapy, or if we have a broken bone, we go get a cast put on. So where does energy fit into all of that? And how does that work with our human blueprint, our human makeup to come into these healing spaces? I feel like there's so much empowerment in energy healing, but how do we relate that to sort of what's out there mainstream and what most people get to encounter in their day-to-day lives?
I know a lot of people think of energy healing as kind of woo-woo out there, right? But energy healing is more connected to science than it ever has been before. And just because of discoveries. But if we think of our bodies, it's a scientific fact that we are a bunch of vibrating cells. And each cell has a sender and a receiver. And each cell, think of it, billions and trillions of cells that are in our body, are sending and receiving energy signals every single day, every single moment of our lives. And when we get next to somebody else, our energy signals affect the person that is next to us. So if our senders and receivers are talking to another person's senders and receivers, what kind of energy is created? It's like if you are in a room where everyone's happy and everyone's having a great time and they're laughing, and someone comes in angry, what happens? The entire room turns heavy. Everyone starts to quiet because they can feel it. And it's that part of our amygdala that goes, are we in fight or flight? Do we need to defend ourselves right now? Is there something here that needs to happen? And so even if we closed our eyes and our mother came and sat next to us, we would know it. We would know it without a shadow of a doubt that that's our mother, even if we didn't see her. That's how our senders and receivers are constantly working. So when you use the senders and receivers to actually benefit the body, by one person knowing that these senders and receivers are going to go to that person's body and it's going to go exactly where it needs to go. That's how energy healing happens.
Wow. I actually really love the way you explain that because it sounds like something we should all be benefiting from and building into our lives. And yet I know so many people who've never even heard of it. And it's fantastic that you're working with that and making this accessible to people. Now, as you said, when you were talking about the Las Vegas massacre before, in that moment, in that really profound experience that you went through, something shifted in your abilities and you awakened or deepened to some of these experiences. Does that mean that in essence, our listeners can also energy heal or work with that? Or are these specific abilities that only some people have and you have to work with someone? Or how does that work when we want to actually incorporate energy healing into our lives?
The most amazing thing is to remember is that we are spirits having a human experience. Every spirit has the ability to affect energy because our spirits are energy. So I believe that every person has the ability to heal. They just are under the guise or under the illusion that they're only body, that they're only flesh. And we are so much more than that. So when you can actually open up to the fact that you are a spirit having a human experience and these bodies are just our vehicles, the world opens up. Possibilities open up. It now becomes an everything, not just this or that. It's an all, not or.
Wow. Yeah, I'm letting that sink in because it feels so expansive and contrary to what we often grow up with and are told, even as children. There are limits, there are rules, there's this, there's that. We can't do that, you can't do that. So, this is very contrary to that in a very empowering and freeing way. I love that. And how do our actual belief systems, because you mentioned in the very beginning, oh, this might be a belief system. how how does that tie into our healing when it comes to energy? Our thoughts, I imagine, our emotions, everything ties into energy. How does all that come together when we want to actually look at healing trauma or anxiety or PTSD or stress when we want to use energy in that context?
I love that question because so many people don't realize that their thoughts, words, and actions create their reality. That when you align your thoughts, words, and actions, if you believe you can't, you can't. If you believe you aren't, you aren't. And an example, say you wake up in the morning and you stub your toe and you're like, oh my God, this is going to be the worst day ever. You wake up in the worst mood. Everything in the universe will align to that belief system, that thought. Oh my God, it's going to be the worst day ever. If I stubbed my toe and went, oh my God, maybe I needed to look at something here. Maybe I needed to pay attention. Thank you, universe, for showing me this. I'm in gratitude. Guess what happens? The universe will send you gratitude, the energy. And it's not even, let's even leave out the universe for a second and just talk about our energy senders and receivers, right? We're sending the signal it's going to be the worst day ever. And then the receivers go, oh, yes, here we go. We're going to get confirmation here that that's the worst day ever because we have to be proven right, right? How many times have we wanted to be right, right? We want to talk and we have to be right. Well, the energy goes, okay, you're right. We're going to draw that to you. So if you want to heal and if you want to learn how to heal, or even if you just want this horrible feeling in your gut to go away, then you begin to believe and remember that you're a spirit having a human experience. What was this experience for? Why am I experiencing this adversity at this moment? And how do I heal it? How do I shift out of this hamster wheel that I'm on? How do I get off the wheel and say, you know what? This is not aligning with me. I love to think of this life as a game. We're on a game board. And the gamekeeper is going to keep sending us speed bumps and all that kind of stuff. And we can choose to go, oh my God, and not another speed bump. Or we can pedal to the metal and we can just make it a ride, like, just catch some air and jump over that thing. And then say, wow, maybe you should, maybe I should think about getting or investing in a sports car, right? I'm going to go full on. I'm going to go forward. No speed bump or anything is going to stop me from moving forward.
Yeah. That sounds a lot more fun than a lot of the things that are going on in the world at the moment that are very heavy and very draining. So, changing that perspective and actually understanding what we're doing here and bringing that perspective that we do have room for curiosity, that we do have room for gratitude, and also to play a little bit in this lifetime. Such important shifts, maybe, in how we approach our days and our life in general. Now, I want to ask you, because a lot of people tell me that they don't have intuition, or at the very least, they just can't connect to it. So they would ask questions of, how could I best heal? And there's just nothing that comes back. So, how can our listeners begin to connect with that intuition? Or I even want to call it that self trust that opens us up to a lot of the energy work and connects us with that. How can our listeners take some first steps to really reconnect with that and bring that back into their lives?
You said something very important. You say, how do we remember? How do we reconnect to that? Because it's already there, you know? So many people forget that they say, I don't have intuition, but they forget that when they meet somebody, they know, oh, I don't like them. We explain it away. We explain away how we turned left instead of right, and something just shifted completely in our thought process. We explain away when we move out of the way of something and then something passes and it could have hit us. We think all those are coincidences, but what it is our intuition. So tapping into that is huge. And it's, first of all, believing in yourself, really just believing in, okay, I am a spirit having a human experience. I am connected to the divine energy. And so if I'm connected to the divine energy, let me start paying attention to what my body's saying. Let me start paying attention to, oh, my stomach doesn't feel very well around that person. Why does my stomach hurt when I'm around that person? One of two things. Either one, they're having stomach issues, or two, you just don't like that person. Like maybe your body says, get away from them. You're not feeling good. And I mean, I can give a good example. What if you're coming home and every time you come home, you're nauseous and you're like, oh God, I got to go back to that environment. There's something in that environment that is creating that nausea that's telling you, hello, something is wrong here. And so beginning to really pay attention to that and not explain it away and ask, like you said, I love what you said, be curious. Let's play with that for a minute. Remember, life isn't so serious. And we take it so seriously, like, oh my God, like every wrong decision is going to end the world. But the world doesn't end with the wrong decision. We learn with the right decisions and we learn with the wrong decisions. So play, be curious. Why am I feeling this way? Where's this coming from? Oh man, fun is that I get to experience this in this moment so that I can propel forward. Those types of things, I think, is going to be the best way for somebody to actually begin to tap into their intuition and really pay attention to their bodies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And as you're saying that, I'm feeling that probably a lot of listeners can identify with that feeling of the pit in the stomach just going to work. I think that's usually a big one is when you're not aligned with your work, or you have challenges with your boss or your coworkers. It's usually something happens in the physiology. We get headaches, stomach aches, back aches, as we're going to work. So I think a lot of us can identify with that for sure. So, yeah.
I want to add something. When you have anything happen to your body, let's say that you've had a leg problem, right? Something's going on with your leg. Think about this. What does your leg represent? Your leg, what does it do? It moves. It moves you. It propels you. It stabilizes you. It supports you. So maybe those are the things that you're not getting in your life. And when you don't have those things, that energy builds up. The senders and receivers say, I'm not supported, so I'm going to hold that energy in. And then it continues to get worse and worse and worse because we continue to sit in our own, oh, this isn't fun, instead of playing with it and being curious with it.
Yeah, that's also really well said, because a lot of times we start hurting in exactly those places that symbolize different certain things, right, in our lives, like our shoulders and neck hurting because we're carrying too much, or our feet, knees, hips hurting because there's a step forward we don't or can't take. So I feel the more we listen to our bodies, that does become more apparent as we tune in more and listen more. So, yeah, I love that our bodies speak to us in these kind of ways. And it is really just a reconnection to listening to that language again and understanding it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm also very curious about what working with you on energy healing actually would look like, because you mentioned before that you remember to go into the brain and to shift some things when it comes to the amygdala. And when we work with trauma and chronic stress, these are obviously very impactful brain regions that are involved in a lot of the stress responses and issues that we have going forward. So, what does that actually mean? And what would a session with you look like for our listeners if they're curious about energy healing?
So I try and have as much fun as possible. I'm going to remove try. I like to have as much fun as possible. And I like to create a sense of security first. So when someone comes to me, we first talk. And I'm already shifting energy, as like my senders and receivers are already sending energy right away. But we'll talk and I'll ask, what's going on? How are you feeling? And we'll go into that. And then as someone is talking to me, I'm seeing the many different levels. I'm seeing, okay, the amygdala is saying this, the body is saying that. We're going through the different levels to figure out what's going on. And then we go into okay, so say that someone's having anxiety issues. And then we get to a point where we need to figure out where this happened, where this first began. Because I'm always about clearing the root, because you can clear the weeds on the top, but if you don't get to the root, it'll keep growing back. So then we go deeper. And so what does it look like? When was the first time that you felt that way? And I just had a client the other day who was talking about rejection, because rejection is a big one for a lot of us, right? And she was talking about she felt rejected. And so we went back and I said, when was the first time that you felt rejected? And she's like, well, I don't really know. I'd have to think about that. I'm like, don't think about it. Let the brain tell you. And what I do is I like to play Marco Polo with the brain, right? So I will start looking at the energy of the brain and where things light up as they're speaking. So if they say, oh, my dad, didn't go to my high school play and it felt terrible that my dad didn't show up, then I start looking to see where the brain's firing. So I know where to go and shift the energy and move that trigger out of there. And then within seconds or minutes, the person feels calm. And then I ask them, where is that now? How do you feel about it now? And 9 times out of 10, they'll tell me, I don't feel the rejection energy anymore. And that's how, I go in and I move with the body and with the brain to move those feelings and energies out.
Yeah. And how is it that we can spend decades in therapy and not have those similar results? And, I'm speaking a little bit from experience because I spent, I think, nearly a decade in therapy. And it wasn't until I started working with energy that those shifts that you are talking about actually happened. And there was a lot of trauma involved, and a lot of physical, mental, and emotional trauma that just didn't shift through simply just talking about it in therapy. But how is it that energy can work with these challenges in such a quick and efficient way. What is different that we are doing on this energetic level that makes that possible?
So there's a lot more to talking. We've got to align our thoughts, words, and actions. So we have to align all the energies of the brain, our actions, and what we say. So we have to align everything together. So when we go to therapy, we're talking, right? And we're talking, and we might actually get some insight. But what happens in therapy? We're talking, and we finally get to this amazing piece. Oh, yes, that's it. And then she goes, time. See you next week. Wait a minute. Like, we just uncovered the root, and now we got to start all over again. So the next therapy session, you're talking and you're like, yeah, we talked about that, but I don't really feel it now. It hasn't, the energy's not really coming up. So we'll talk about something else. So what happens? That huge epiphany kind of loses its fizz. When you're in an energy healing session, that epiphany, we go, oh, we're going to amplify the good part of that, and we're going to move out that energy. So even as you're saying it, we provide the space for that energy to move and not sit. But I feel, and no offense to those who do counseling and those types of things, I think people need to hear it. But I feel that counseling coupled with energy healing, those two together are a powerhouse. I work with psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors, and they send me their clients. Okay, this person is just not getting past this part. Help me. And that is where I feel like there needs to be a marrying of services.
Yeah, absolutely. That complementary space of sharing with words, but then also having the action part of energy healing that can actually shift that energy. So, yeah, I feel
Yes.
like those two, and I wish I had known about that when I first started therapy. I think it would have definitely shifted a lot of things for me a lot quicker. So
Oh,
I,
yes.
I completely agree that this is a really great combination and very complementary for people. And I'm also kind of wondering a little bit about when we are dealing with very deep seated issues, and a lot of us, as have experienced a lot of deep trauma and maybe even from childhood or past lives, past generations that all gets passed down to us. How can we work with energy healing in a way that we don't get re-traumatized every time we have to think back or talk about? Because that is what happened to me frequently. I had to bring it up several times, think about it again, go through the feelings again, talk about it again. How is energy healing different when it approaches these very, very profound challenges that we have?
So, I mean, I can use the Vegas experience. I've told the story so many times that it no longer feels like it's a piece of me. But I've done the work. I've pushed out the energy. I've put it into a different space. I've done the work. But yeah, it does get you re-traumatizing, right? Especially when you haven't pulled out the energy, when you haven't moved what it is that's creating that. But you said something I wanted to jump a little bit. You said something very important about ancestors and DNA and all of that. And our ancestors, we own their energy. We don't choose to own their energy, but we're told from very, very, very young, you're just like them. Oh, yes, you're just like them. And we're conditioned to believe that we're just like our family members. So what do? We take on all their crap. But when like you were talking about, and I love that word and I keep saying it, but when we're curious about why, why am I destined to relive what every single female in my lineage has lived? I don't subscribe to that tomfoolery. Like, I don't subscribe to that. Like, that is, I'm my own individual. I'm a spirit having a human experience. Just because my body has ancestors that acted crazy doesn't mean that my body has to act crazy. And so I begin to disconnect myself from that responsibility. I'm not responsible for what my ancestors did. And I'm not responsible, even though I may have their DNA, I can clear that DNA and say, you know what? In my lineage, I'm completely healthy. In my lineage, I have love without craziness, without trauma, without whatever it is, alcoholism or whatever the case may be. And so I think a lot of it is we just own what other people say. We just own it, right? Instead of, and what do we do? Oh, every time you talk about that, you must feel terrible. If you disassociate yourself from it and say, you know what? I'm not that. That was an experience that happened to me. I'm not that experience. I'm not the experience that happened in Vegas. I am something totally different. That experience, I'm not the victim. I'm definitely, if anybody asks me, I am not the victim of what happened in Vegas. If anything, I was supposed to be there. I was there. I survived. I helped as many people as I could. And I opened up so vastly to be able to help more people. So I think we can be leaders rather than victims of the energy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really empowering in itself when you say that. So we're taking back some of that agency, some of our own power, our own choice in all of these experiences as we are moving on our path here on this planet and in this body. Yeah. Now, Shannon, I do want to come back to the curiosity because I feel like listeners might be very curious about what you and I have just been talking about. And so let us know a little bit about how our listeners can connect with you. Where can they find you? And what kind of programs and services do you offer if our listeners want to work with you on some of their own challenges in their lives?
So I am very available. I'm all over the place. I'm on Facebook, Shannon Leischner. I am on Instagram, Angelic Guide, just like the angel Angelic Guide. You could even email me, shannonleischner@yahoo.com. I have a website, shannonleischner.com. So many ways to get a hold of me. And I do have a program coming out, 1010. It's about creating financial freedom and removing the old belief systems so that things can begin to move in your life. Because we're held back by owning our ancestors' energy, and that's not where we are today. And then I also have another program coming out by the end of the year. The date has not been set yet, but I am going to do couples hypnosis class. So we're going to work through areas of need for couples, and we're going to show them how to heal each other through hypnosis and help each other. So I've got lots of stuff coming up and lots of new projects that we're so excited for. And then I also just released a book. I co-authored it with 50 other women, and it was amazing. And my section of the book talks about suiting up and showing up. You came here for a reason, and it's time for you to accept your path. And the book is called What's Your Why? And it's available everywhere.
Amazing. You have so many really incredible things coming up. I very much look forward to connecting our listeners with those. And of course, we will be linking to all of Shannon's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can reach her. And we will make sure we link to your website so that listeners can check out when the programs are upcoming and what's new. And I have a feeling that we'll be seeing you in a lot of different summits going forward as well. So hope we can connect with you on some of those going into the future and coming up into next year. So thank you,
Yes.
Shannon, so much.
Before we end, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I almost forgot. For those listeners here, you're going to get 20% off of my services if you just mention the show. So I want to make sure that I can extend that offer to people.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so generous. And I really hope our listeners benefit from that, take advantage of that, and go hop over to Shannon's website when you're done listening to the episode, connect with her. And I know that, as you said, in the beginning, sometimes we think there isn't really anything to work on or we're fine. But as we start tuning in, there's usually things that come up that we definitely would benefit from working on energy healing with. And, those could be physical things, emotional things, mental things that we're experiencing. So, yes, thank you so much for that. And I will make sure we link to that as well in the show notes so our listeners know how to get a hold of you. And I feel now we can wrap up. We have the resources, we have the amazing gift. And thank you so much, Shannon, for being here today and sharing this really profound and incredible wisdom that you have with energy healing. And, in that sense, it does come through many generations to you. And I feel like that is one of the parts that just shines when you are working with people. So thank you for bringing that gift into the world and sharing that with us. And thank you for spending time with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor. Thank you.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure. And take really good care of yourself. And I'm sure we'll be chatting again. And there seems to be so much more that we can talk about. So we'll keep our listeners posted. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Jōrni Podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Jōrni on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejōrni.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.